The drama begins with our female lead, Jane, narrating that 20 years ago, her grandfather arranged her marriage with Lucas, the CEO of LU Group Company. However, her stepsister, Ivy, desired to marry into a wealthy family. As a result, Jane's father swapped their fates, getting Ivy married to Lucas while Jane was married off to Leo, the illegitimate son of the CEO of Leo Group Company. Now, after so many years, Jane's husband, Leo, has become wealthy and has inherited the entire Leo Group Company. Meanwhile, Ivy's husband, Lucas, has passed away, and all his wealth has been lost, leaving Ivy in poverty. Tonight's party is hosted by Jane's husband, Leo, to transfer his company to their son's name. Jane reflects on how people envy her for having such a successful husband and son, but she reveals that none of it is real, everything is a facade. Suddenly, Ivy arrives at the party, furious and envious. She stabs Jane, exclaiming that the luxurious life should have been hers, not Jane's. As Jane takes her last breath, she feels relieved, believing she is finally free from this life. However, she wakes up to find herself back in time, 20 years earlier, at her father's house. Shocked and confused, she watches as her father slaps her while yelling in anger. Her stepmother intervenes, defending Jane and attempting to reason with him. She tells Jane that she should marry Lucas, emphasizing that although he is an illegitimate son, he is handsome and a better choice than Leo, who is disabled. At that moment, Jane recalls everything. This was the exact day her father forced her into marriage. Ivy, wanting to marry into a wealthy family, had convinced their father to swap their fates. To ensure Jane's compliance, her father had even threatened to discard her mother's ashes. Jane's stepmother tries to persuade her, mentioning that Leo has already sent a diamond ring before the wedding as a token of his sincerity. Jane, overwhelmed, wonders if she must marry Leo again in her second life. Just then, Ivy appears and takes the ring, announcing that she wants to marry Leo instead. Jane is stunned. How is this possible? In her past life, Ivy was obsessed with marrying Lucas. Why has she suddenly changed her mind? Ivy slips the ring on her finger, but her mother scolds her, demanding that she take it off. She asks Ivy if she has lost her mind for wanting to marry an illegitimate son. However, Ivy confidently replies, "Mom, trust me. I believe Leo is capable, and one day, he will inherit his family's wealth. He will become one of the richest men in the city. Just imagine how proud you'll be when I become the wife of a powerful president and give you a grandson." Jane is taken aback. Could Ivy have also been reborn like her? Meanwhile, Ivy's parents insist that she should marry Lucas, but Ivy stands firm. She refuses to marry a disabled man. At that moment, Lucas arrives. He is none other than the male lead of our drama. He calmly says, "I had no idea the daughter of your family thinks of me this way." Unbothered, Ivy sighs, "What did I say that was wrong? Besides, I've heard that disabled people can function normally these days, but who knows? You might still ruin every important moment in your life." Horrified, Ivy's parents scold her, telling her to stop speaking so disrespectfully. Ivy adds, "Fine, I'll marry you, but only on one condition. I'll agree when your wicked mother is no longer around. Once she dies, I'll consider it." Lucas becomes furious at Ivy's words. Just then, Jane steps forward and slaps Ivy, scolding her for speaking so disrespectfully about Mr. Lucas's mother. Ivy, shocked and enraged, shouts at Jane, demanding to know how she dared to raise her hand against her. Jane's father immediately intervenes, yelling at Ivy to apologize to Mr. Lucas. But before she can say anything, Lucas coldly replies, "There's no need for an apology. I am canceling this marriage right now, and I will never forget the humiliation you have brought upon my family today." Hearing this, Jane's father panics. He quickly stops Lucas from leaving and, in desperation, pushes Jane toward him. She stumbles and falls into Lucas's arms, and for a moment, their eyes meet. Jane's father seizes the opportunity and says, "This is my second daughter, Jane. She is just as beautiful. Why don't you marry her instead? After all, your engagement was originally arranged with her." Lucas's assistant, outraged, speaks up. "Do you people think my boss is some kind of leftover item at a market? First, the older sister didn't want to marry him, so you forced the younger sister. And now that even she refuses, you're trying to switch them again? Lucas turns to leave, disgusted by the situation. But before he can go, Jane suddenly calls out to him. In that moment, memories from her previous life flood her mind. She remembers that her husband, Leo, had been having an affair with a maid, who was now pregnant with his child. She recalls how Leo had coldly told her that the only reason he married her was because his grandfather had made it a condition for him to inherit the family property. He had never loved her, he only needed her name to legitimize his unborn child. When Jane refused to go along with his plan, Leo had cruelly declared, "Then you are of no use to me. Just die." He had even ordered his guards to kill her. At that moment, Lucas had arrived to save her. The guards, terrified of him, had fled. Jane had realized that if Lucas hadn't come, she would have died that night. Now, standing before Lucas in this second life, Jane thinks, if I had married him, he would still be alive today. Determined, she looks at Lucas and asks, "Do you want to marry me?" Lucas, taken aback, narrows his eyes. He remembers how Jane had broken off their engagement before. With a cold expression, he replies, "Why would I marry a girl who doesn't know how to keep her promises?" Then, without another word, he turns and leaves. As he steps outside, he glances down and notices the engagement token still in his hand. He murmurs, "Now that the marriage between our families has been cancelled, I should return this." Meanwhile, inside the house, Jane's father is furious. He slaps her hard and yells, "If Mr. Lucas leaves because of you, I will not forgive you." Jane retorts, "What did I do? You were the one who made Mr. Lucas angry. You were the one who broke my engagement with him and arranged for him to marry Ivy. And now that Ivy rejected the marriage, you're blaming me?" Just then, Lucas, who had been about to leave, pauses at the doorway. He overhears Jane's words. Jane's father's anger only grows, but before he can say anything, Ivy interjects, "Dad, don't be mad. It seems my sister has lost her mind, she actually wants to marry that disabled man." But Jane doesn't back down. Instead, she firmly states, "Mr. Lucas is an incredibly talented man who took over his company at such a young age. So what's wrong if I want to marry him?" Ivy. "But you're just a poor girl. He doesn't want you. He thinks you're beneath him." Ivy adds, "Now that you can't marry Lucas, don't even think about looking at my Leo. He belongs to me." Jane, "Don't worry. In fact, I'd like to congratulate you and Leo on your marriage." Hearing this, Jane's father explodes in rage. He orders the maids, "Lock her in her room. She is not to be let out without my permission." The maids quickly grab Jane and drag her away, locking the door behind her. As Jane is taken away, Lucas watches in silence, feeling a strange sense of unease. Later, when he arrives home, his assistant explains everything to his mother. Hearing this, Lucas's mother brightens up. "Did that girl really praise Lucas so much?" she asks excitedly. "Yes, madam. And the boss was also there. He heard it himself." Lucas's mother is overjoyed. "I always thought no girl would accept my son because of his disability. But this girl sees him differently. She isn't greedy like the others." She smiles warmly and turns to Lucas. "I think you should marry Jane." The assistant hesitates before speaking. "But madam, the master has already rejected Miss Jane." Lucas, after a moment of thought, finally says, "Go back to her house and arrange the wedding. Set the date as well." His mother's face lights up with happiness. "This is the first time you've chosen a bride for yourself." She turns to her husband. "Prepare a wedding gift and send it to Jane's house immediately." Meanwhile, at Jane's house, her father unlocks the door and brings her out. Jane feels dizzy from being locked inside for so long. One of the maids approaches her with concern. "Miss Jane, you must be hungry. You haven't eaten anything since yesterday. I'll cook something for you." Before Jane can respond, Ivy and her mother return from shopping. Ivy taunts, "Sister, if you're not hungry, you should go back to your room. Anyway, today, Leo's family is coming with a marriage proposal for me." Both mother and daughter excitedly talk about how much wealth they will gain from Ivy's marriage. Ivy boasts, "Mom, let me tell you something. In 20 years, Leo will become the richest man in the city. No one will be wealthier than him." Just then, Jane's father enters the room. "Guests are about to arrive," he announces. Ivy and her mother exchange delighted glances. "The Leo family must be here," Ivy exclaims, but Jane's father shakes his head. "No, it's not the Leo family. Mr. Lucas's people have come with a marriage proposal." Ivy and her mother freeze in shock. Moments later, Lucas's assistant and staff enter, carrying lavish wedding gifts, keys to luxury cars, property documents, bank cards, and exquisite jewelry. Ivy, unable to believe her eyes, reaches out to touch an expensive diamond ring. The assistant immediately stops her. "All of these belong to Miss Jane. Mr. Lucas has personally sent a marriage proposal for her." Ivy's mother finally stammers, Is this really a marriage proposal for Jane?" The assistant and turns to Jane. "Miss Jane, please prepare for the wedding. Mr. Lucas has agreed to marry you." Jane's father, now realizing the significance of the proposal, beams with joy. Lucas must truly like her. That's why he agreed to marry her. Ivy's wedding is also celebrated. During the preparations, Jane's mother approaches her and says, "After you marry Lucas, you should think about your brother-in-law, that illegitimate son, and help him get a good position in Lucas's company." Jane looks at her mother in disbelief. "Mom, what are you saying? My husband doesn't need the support of his family. And anyway, I'm sure my sister won't have any value in Mr. Lucas's house." Ivy suddenly remembers her past life, when she was living in Lucas's home. Lucas's mother had given a very expensive jade pendant to her adoptive daughter. Ivy had felt humiliated. How could an adopted girl receive such a valuable gift? In her jealousy, she had snatched the pendant from the girl and declared, "I am the daughter-in-law of this house. This belongs to me." She had even slapped the girl and shouted at her, "An adopted girl like you is nothing compared to me." But Lucas's mother had been furious. She had slapped Ivy in return and scolded her, "What kind of girl are you? Today, I realize that someone like you is unworthy of my son." She had then taken the jade pendant away from Ivy and given it back to her adoptive daughter. Now, remembering this painful experience, Ivy turns to her mother and father and says, "Even after I marry Lucas, they will never give me that jade pendant. It's too precious." Jane's father: "Then what's the point of marrying Lucas if you won't get anything out of it?" Jane: "If that's the case, why don't you marry Ivy to Lucas instead?" Ivy's mother snaps angrily, "Jane, are you trying to push Ivy into your place so she can marry Lucas instead?" But Ivy, hearing Lucas's name, turns pale. She suddenly remembers how, in her past life, Lucas had punished her for her misdeeds by sending her to jail for 2 years. Fear grips her. "No. I don't want to live that life again." Panicked, she quickly tells Jane, "Sister, you and Lucas are a perfect match. How could I possibly come between you two?" Her mother, frustrated, scolds Ivy, "Are you out of your mind? Can't you see that Lucas has sent Jane so many expensive gifts? And what have you received from that illegitimate boy? Nothing. Are you seriously letting Jane take all the benefits?" But Ivy shakes her head and whispers into Jane's ear, "Sister, I'm warning you in advance, fighting for your man with another woman is not easy. It's a battle you'll regret." Jane glares at Ivy, her anger rising. Finally, the day arrives when both stepsisters get married, Jane to Lucas and Ivy to Leo. As Jane leaves with her husband, Lucas, and Ivy departs with her husband, Leo, their fates are sealed in a way neither of them had expected. After arriving at Leo's house, Ivy prepares to serve tea to his mother. But as the maid brings the tea, she accidentally spills it on Ivy's dress. But before she can react, Leo's mother slaps her hard and shouts, "What kind of a girl are you? You've ruined my entire wedding dress." Angry, she turns to Leo and says, "We don't need to keep such a useless servant here. Get rid of her." Leo and his mother exchange glances, before calming her down. She's 2 months pregnant, Leo explains. We can't throw her out like this, it would bring shame to our family. He subtly signals the maid to go inside. Then, acting kind and gentle, Leo comforts Ivy, making her believe he is truly a good husband. So this is why Jane was so happy with him in my previous life, Ivy thinks. She lived such a luxurious and joyful life with him, but things are different now. In this life, Ivy will face everything Jane went through before. Meanwhile, at Lucas's house, Jane is waiting in Lucas's room, lost in thought. She remembers how, in her previous life, Lucas had helped her. He had gathered all the evidence against Leo and had even offered to hire a good lawyer for her divorce. I can help you get divorced, Lucas had told her. Yes, I want a divorce. All right then, wait for me. I'll take care of it. As he was leaving, Jane had stopped him and asked, "Why are you helping me?" "I broke our engagement and chose Leo over you." Lucas had given her a cold look and replied, "Think of it as charity." That was the last time Jane had seen him alive. Not long after, Lucas had died in an accident, and Leo had snatched away the evidence Lucas had given her. Now, Jane clenches her fists. The mistake I made in my past life, I will not repeat it in this one. Just then, Lucas enters the room. "What do you want to tell me about this marriage?" he asks. Jane looks him in the eye and says firmly, "I never wanted to break my engagement with you. My father forced me to do it." Lucas studies her expression. "So, you really wanted to marry me?" "Yes," Jane answers without hesitation. Lucas slightly. "Then help me take off my clothes." Jane and starts unbuttoning his shirt. Just as he leans in to kiss her, the maid suddenly enters the room. "Sir, Emily had a nightmare at the hospital," she says. "She's crying a lot and wants to see you." He sighs and turns to Jane. "Emily is very sick. She has no one except me. If I don't go, she'll be upset." Jane. "If she's sick, then you should go see her quickly." Lucas hesitates, watching her closely. Why does she not seem to care? Today is our wedding night. Does it mean nothing to her? Still, he doesn't say anything. "If you need anything, tell the maid," he says before leaving. Anne feels hurt as she remembers Ivy's words. Did Ivy lie to me? Does Lucas really have feelings for that girl? The next morning, Lucas's mother visits Jane in her room and asks, "I heard from the maid that you sent some things to the hospital for Lucas." Jane. "Last night, Lucas went to the hospital, so I thought he might need some things." Lucas's mother looks at her warmly. "You and Lucas got married yesterday, yet Emily didn't come home from the hospital. Instead, she called Lucas there." Jane replies calmly, "Mom, it doesn't matter. What could be more important than Emily's health? Besides, I was fine on my own." Hearing this, Lucas's mother smiles. "I knew you were a good and sensible girl." Then, she continues, 3 years ago, Emily saved my life. But after that, she suffered a head injury and lost her memory. The only thing she remembers is her name. That's why I adopted her. She did me a great favor, so I take good care of her." Jane understandingly. "Mom, I understand. That's why I will also take care of Emily like my own sister." Touched by Jane's words, Lucas's mother removes a jade pendant from her neck and hands it to Jane. "Now that you are the daughter-in-law of this family, this belongs to you." As Jane looks at the pendant, she immediately realizes this is what Ivy was talking about. She hesitates before saying, "This must be very expensive. I can't accept it." Lucas's mother gently places the pendant back in Jane's hands and insists, "You are the daughter-in-law of our family. You must keep it." Feeling grateful, Jane thanks her mother-in-law. Later that day, when Lucas returns home, his mother asks, "Where's Emily?" Lucas replies, "The doctor said she needs to stay in the hospital for a few more days." Then, he glances around. "Where's Jane?" His mother raises an eyebrow. "Did you forget? The day after the wedding, a bride is supposed to visit her family with her husband. Since you were busy, she went alone. She told me she didn't want to disturb you, so she left quietly." Lucas's mother, and shakes her head. What a good daughter-in-law she is. Now, you need to take good care of her. I almost forgot, I didn't send a gift to her family. Meanwhile, at Jane's family home, Ivy arrives with her husband, Leo. She hands her parents a gift and says proudly, "Leo bought so many gifts for you." Then, she looks around and asks, "Has Jane not come yet?" Even if she comes, she will be alone. Lucas won't come with her, Ivy to herself. Just then, Jane arrives. Her father looks behind her and frowns. "Where's Lucas?" Jane answers calmly, "Dad, he was very busy, so I came alone. But I'm here to represent both of us." Ivy quickly grabs Jane's bag and says, "Let me also see what gift this son-in-law, who didn't even bother to come here, has sent to his parents." She opens the box, expecting something grand, but her expression changes when she sees what's inside. "I thought it would be an expensive gift." "Sister, is this really what you brought for Mom and Dad after marrying into such a wealthy family?" "In fact, my husband has given them a much more expensive gift than you." Then, Ivy notices the jade pendant around Jane's neck. Her eyes widen in shock, and she suddenly shouts, "How did you get this? You must have stolen it, right?" Hearing this, Jane's father immediately slaps Ivy. "Are you accusing your own sister of stealing?" Jane calmly responds, "Mom gave it to me herself." Ivy shakes her head in disbelief. "That's impossible. That pendant is a family heirloom. There's no way they would give it to a stranger like you. You must have stolen it, and they probably took it back from your house." Now, even Jane's father starts doubting her and begins scolding her. But just then, Lucas walks in. He looks around and says firmly, "My wife is telling the truth. She didn't steal anything. My mother gave it to her herself." Ivy is stunned. "What are you doing here? How did you come here like this?" Lucas responds calmly, "I am Jane's husband, so of course, I came to visit my in-laws." But Ivy refuses to stay quiet. Before she can say more, her mother quickly steps in, trying to calm her down. She nervously tells Lucas, "Please don't listen to her. She just says whatever comes to her mind." Lucas glares at Ivy and says coldly, "She behaves like this, yet Jane is the one who is kind-hearted and gentle. That's why my mother and I like her so much." Then, turning to Ivy's parents, he adds, "You should take better care of your daughter." Ivy clenches her fists. This can't be true. There's no way they gave her such a valuable family heirloom. You're lying just to make her look good. Jane's father, still skeptical, says, "I've taken such good care of you, Jane. If that pendant is really yours, then give it to me for safekeeping." Jane hesitates. This jade pendant is so precious. Instead of handing it over, she turns to Lucas and gives it to him. Lucas takes the pendant and gently says, "My mother gave this to you with a lot of love. You should keep it." Seeing this, Ivy becomes furious. "How can she have something I never got?" In her anger, she lunges forward, trying to snatch the pendant. She pushes Jane, causing her to lose balance. Just as Jane is about to fall, Lucas suddenly stands up and catches her. Jane gasps in shock. He has been unable to walk since childhood, so how did he just get up like that? But before she can say anything, Lucas stumbles and falls back into his wheelchair. Jane rushes to him, worried. "Are you okay?" Meanwhile, Ivy clutches the pendant in her hand. Leo, her husband, steps forward and orders, "Return the jade pendant to Lucas's wife." Ivy refuses, gripping it tighter. He slaps her and demands, "Give it to her. Now." Tears welling in her eyes. Ivy snaps, "You're my husband. You should be taking my side. But instead, you're hitting me?" Leo ignores her complaints and turns to Lucas, handing him the pendant. "Please don't be angry with my wife and me." Lucas takes the pendant and says sternly, "Your wife has made a mistake. She needs to apologize to my wife." Ivy refuses to apologize, but her parents quickly step in to handle the situation. They brush it off with a smile, saying, "Sisters fight all the time. Let's not make a big deal out of it. Come on, let's eat." Everyone sits down for dinner. Jane's stepmother starts treating her well and advises her, don't get involved in any trouble with Ivy's husband. He doesn't have much power in his family anyway. Since he's illegitimate. Ivy interrupts angrily, Mom, what are you saying? What can these people even do to us? Then she boasts, my husband is about to get support from a very rich woman, Miss Wenny. Hearing that name, Jane is suddenly lost in thought. She remembers her past life. Back then, Leo had sent her to find Miss Wenny so she could invest in his company. But when she arrived at the building, the security guards wouldn't let her in. At that moment, an older woman arrived, carrying an advertisement. She was looking for her lost daughter. The guards pushed her away harshly, and Jane immediately rushed to help her. I'll take you to the hospital, Jane had told her, but when Jane returned home, Leo was furious. He yelled at her, you're useless. If you had asked Lucas for help, maybe you would have met Miss Wenny. Ivy had taken this chance to provoke Leo. She must have gone to meet Lucas instead. He has a fiancé, yet she was probably flirting with him. Leo had turned on Jane in anger. How could you do this? He shouted, but later, something unexpected happened. Miss Wenny herself came to visit Jane. She had come to thank her for saving her life. Because of Jane, Miss Wenny had agreed to invest in Leo's company. Back in the present, Ivy is thrilled. Miss Wenny will definitely invest in our company now. But Leo isn't as confident. Why would a rich woman like Miss Wenny choose me? Ivy reassures him, believe in yourself. One day, you'll be very rich. Jane silently thinks to herself, it was because of me that Leo's company got so much help. That's why Miss Wenny invested back then. But no matter how much these people dream now, it won't happen again. As Ivy starts talking about Lucas's family, Lucas becomes irritated. He turns to Jane and says, let's go. Ivy, watching them leave, clenches her fists in anger. She gets into her car. Thinking, I'll deal with Jane in this life in my own way, she grips the steering wheel and speeds toward Jane, planning to hit her with the car. But just then, another woman appears behind Jane. Seeing the danger, Jane quickly runs to save her. Lucas, witnessing Jane in danger, tries to get up from his wheelchair. But his legs fail him, and he falls back down. Jane, when she recognizes the woman she just saved, it's Miss Wenny. Miss Wenny, still shaken, looks at Jane and says, you saved my life again. Just then, Ivy steps out of the car, and Jane angrily shouts, what kind of driving is that? You almost caused an accident. Leo, standing nearby, and says, don't argue with them. Just give them some money to shut them up. Ivy grins. Once Miss Wenny supports us, we'll be unstoppable. These people will be begging to meet us. Miss Wenny, overhearing this, frowns. She looks at Ivy and says coldly, what nonsense are you talking about? I will not invest in your company. I don't even know people like you. Leo and Ivy smiles disappear. Someone asks hesitantly, are you really the same Miss Wenny? The rich woman who just returned from abroad? Miss Wenny. Yes. I am the president of Wynn Group. Leo's face turns pale. He immediately apologizes and nudges Ivy, whispering, apologize to her. Now. But Ivy refuses to believe it. How can a woman dressed in such poor clothes be rich? How are you all believing this? She looks like a beggar. Then, in a mocking tone, Ivy pulls out some money and throws it at Miss Wenny. Here, take this. You weren't even hurt, but keep the money and don't come after me. Leo quickly grabs Ivy's arm and rushes away with her. Meanwhile, Miss Wenny suddenly starts feeling weak. She's getting sick. She faints. Jane panics and immediately takes care of her, hurrying to take her to the hospital. Lucas returns home, and his mother asks him to pick up Emily from the hospital and bring her home. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Jane waits anxiously for Miss Wenny to regain consciousness. As she waits, memories from her past life flood her mind. She remembers how Leo actually became rich, not through hard work, but by fraud. He tricked Miss Wenny into transferring all her property to his name. Miss Wenny had originally invested in her husband's company just to help Jane, but Leo deceived her into signing legal papers, taking everything away from her. Because of this betrayal, Miss Wenny eventually fell ill and passed away. Jane thinks to herself, in my past life, I only helped her a little, yet she treated me like a daughter and supported me so much. This time, I must protect her. Soon, Miss Wenny regains consciousness. She smiles at Jane and says, you don't need to cry, my dear. I'm completely fine. Then, to Jane's surprise, Miss Winnie continues, I have accepted you as my adopted daughter. She silently vows, this time, I will find Miss Winnie's real daughter to repay her kindness. Just then, Miss Winnie's guards arrive, and Miss Winnie hands Jane a small bottle of medicine. This is a very special medicine. It can help cure your husband's legs. Jane's eyes widen with hope. She takes the medicine with gratitude and says, thank you so much, Miss Winnie. Miss Winnie smiles warmly. Don't worry, I will make sure they learn their lesson. Meanwhile, Leo is excited because his grandfather is coming to visit. He believes that his grandfather will finally recognize him as his heir. Ivy is also thrilled and tells him, see? After marrying me, look how lucky you've become. However, when Leo's grandfather arrives, things take an unexpected turn. Instead of praising Leo, he slaps him across the face, I will never make a useless boy like you my heir. Stunned, Leo shouts, what did I do wrong? His grandfather glares at him and replies, ask your wife. She is the reason for all of this. With that, he turns and walks away. Leo, now furious, turns to Ivy and yells, I've lost everything because of you. Ivy is shocked and starts panicking. How did this happen? What went wrong? Trying to calm Leo down, she quickly says, don't worry. I'll talk to Miss Winnie and convince her to invest in your company, and warns her, if you're lying to me, I won't forgive you. Back at the hospital, Jane is leaving with the special medicine. She thinks to herself, if Lucas's legs get cured, maybe his fate will change, and he won't have to suffer like before. Just then, her phone rings. It's Lucas, I'm coming to pick you up from the hospital, he tells her. As she waits, Jane suddenly notices Lucas walking toward another ward. Curious, she follows him and peeks inside. Inside the room, she sees Lucas sitting beside a woman, Emily. Emily is holding his hand tightly and looking into his eyes. Do you care about me? Lucas responds gently, I care for you the most. Jane's heart sinks. She misunderstands the situation and thinks, he already loves someone else. I shouldn't marry him. As Jane is leaving, her mother sees her and says, oh, you're here too. Come inside quickly. Lucas's mother notices Jane's teary eyes and asks gently, were you crying? Emily, trying to lighten the mood, teases, sister-in-law, if my brother has troubled you, just tell us. We'll take revenge on him. Jane feels a pang of guilt. I'm being so selfish, she thinks. Lucas helped me so much in my past life, but in the end, he lost his life. This time, I won't let that happen. She places the medicine on the table and says, this will cure your legs. Then, without waiting for a response, she turns and runs away. Lucas's mother picks up the medicine, her eyes widening in shock. This is the miracle doctor's medicine. It can really cure his legs. Lucas is worried about Jane. Why is she so upset? As he prepares to leave, his assistant stops Jane outside. The master came here to... The assistant asks, Jane shakes her head. Not me. Someone else. Her face is filled with anger as she storms off, gets into a car, and drives away. The assistant watches her go and... She's jealous. Later, he asks Lucas, boss, did you meet another girl here? Your wife seemed really jealous. Lucas. No, I just came to meet Emily. The assistant. Then she must have misunderstood your relationship and left in jealousy. Lucas suddenly recalls Jane wanting to marry him. Does that mean she likes me? Is that why she was jealous? At home, Jane sits in silence, lost in memories from her past life. She remembers when Lucas had saved her life. Wanting to thank him, she had gone to his house, but he was asleep. She had gently placed a jacket over him. However, a photo of he had accidentally fallen from her pocket. When Lucas saw it, he became furious and threw her out. Later, Jane had learned from the housemaid that Emily had passed away, which explained his anger. Now, she realizes something heartbreaking. In my past life, I never got my love. And in this life, I've stopped him from getting his love by marrying him. Determined, she picks up a set of divorce papers. I will set him free. Just then, Lucas enters the room. She quickly hides the papers, but he sees them. His face darkens. There is no such thing as divorce in our family. Only widows. Jane stares at him. Are you really going to ruin your whole life because of this marriage? I only married you to cure your legs. Now that I've given you the medicine, this is the best time for you to be with the person you truly love. Lucas doesn't understand what she's trying to say. Instead of responding, tears them apart, and says firmly, "You cannot divorce me." Tears fill Jane's eyes. I'm doing this to reunite you with Emily. Meanwhile, Ivy takes Leo to Miss Winnie's company. I'll get you the investment, Ivy assures him confidently. Leo starts to believe she has some special connection with Miss Winnie. Maybe that's why she's so sure about this. He thanks her. If this works out, it will change everything for me. However, when they reach the company, the security guard blocks their way. At the same time, Jane arrives, but the guard refuses to let her in as well. Just then, Miss Winnie appears and calls out, "Jane, come with me." She turns to the security guard and orders, "Throw Ivy and Leo out." Ivy's eyes widen in disbelief. This poor woman is pretending to be a rich and powerful Miss Winnie again. The security guard, irritated by Ivy's disrespect, slaps her and warns, "How dare you talk like that to Miss Winnie?" Ivy glares at him. "Just wait until my husband becomes rich. I'll make sure you all get fired." Inside, Miss Winnie leads Jane to a meeting room and announces, "From now on, Jane will be my agent." Jane is taken aback. "But I don't know anything about business. I want you to handle everything because I trust you." Jane hesitates, then agrees, but on one condition: please don't make this public. Miss Winnie in agreement. Jane thinks to herself, "This time, I won't let Miss Winnie's company fall into Leo's hands." Later, Miss Winnie's assistant brings in a file with information about her lost daughter. Jane's eyes widen when she sees the name, Emily. A doubt creeps into her mind. Could Emily be Miss Winnie's long-lost daughter? She decides, "I need to confirm this first, before telling her. If I'm wrong, it could break her heart." Meanwhile, Lucas's treatment is progressing well. The doctor announces, with this medicine, he will fully recover and be able to walk again. Lucas's mother is overjoyed. She thanks Jane, "This is all because of you. If not for you, we would have never received Miss Winnie's medicine." Jane shakes her head. "Mom, I didn't do anything. This is all thanks to Miss Winnie." Lucas's mother then says, "Miss Winnie is hosting a party. You and Lucas should go and thank her in person." The doctor advises, "Lucas just needs some help walking for now." Lucas's mother, "Jane, it would be better if Emily helps him." But Lucas interrupts. "No, Jane. I want you to help me." Lucas's mother takes Emily to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Meanwhile, Lucas reaches out his hand to Jane. "Aren't you going to help me?" And takes his hand. But as soon as she does, he pulls her close to him, looking straight into her eyes. He whispers, "Never talk about divorce again. There will never be any separation between us." And with that, he kisses her. Jane is shocked, and at the same time, Emily and Lucas's mother witness everything. Emily smiles and says, "Mom, did you see that? Everything is fine between brother and sister-in-law. Now you must be relieved, right?" Lucas's mother happily. "Yes, Lucas has found a good wife, and I am very happy." Then she turns to Emily. "But now it's your turn. You should also come to the party with Lucas and Jane. Many young masters from noble families will be there. Maybe you'll meet someone special." Emily hesitates for a moment but then agrees to attend the party. Meanwhile, Leo and Ivy arrive at the party, but people are whispering about them. Because of Ivy's actions, Leo has suffered great financial losses, and all his investors have withdrawn their investments from his company. Ivy has brought Leo here in hopes of meeting Miss Win's agent and securing new investments. At the same time, Jane arrives at the party with Emily. Ivy recognizes Emily immediately and thinks, "This is the girl Lucas and his mother adore." Jane is such a fool for bringing her enemy along. Emily will surely steal her husband away. However, Jane and Emily share a good relationship now. As Jane understands that Emily is just Lucas's sister, Jane thinks to herself, if Miss Wynne sees Emily, maybe she will recognize her as her daughter. Just then, Ivy whispers to Jane, "The girl you brought with you will steal your husband. Just wait and see how your life is going to be ruined. She'll put you in jail." Emily overhears, "What nonsense are you talking about? My brother respects my sister-in-law a lot. He would never do that." But Ivy refuses to believe her. Lucas is definitely going to leave her. At that moment, Lucas appears and gently places his coat over Jane's shoulders. "You must be feeling cold," he says warmly. Seeing Lucas walking, the crowd starts murmuring in surprise. How did he recover? Lucas answers confidently, "It's all because of my wife." Everyone looks at Jane with admiration. "Yes, I am." Emily, pleased with her brother's response, turns to Ivy. "See? My brother and my sister-in-law are a happy, loving couple. They're nothing like you. Just look at yourself. You have a useless husband who's nothing but an illegitimate son. He has nothing." Hearing this, Ivy's face turns red with anger. She remembers how, in her past life, Lucas never liked her and always prioritized Emily. Why is Jane's fate different from mine? Why are Lucas and Emily treating her with so much care? Emily laughs and mocks Ivy. "The elder mother tried to ruin my brother and sister-in-law's relationship. But instead, she ended up becoming a joke herself." Ivy, furious, steps on Emily's dress, causing her to trip. As Emily stumbles, she accidentally pushes Jane. Jane loses her balance and hits her head. Lucas immediately rushes to Jane's side, worried. "Jane, are you okay?" Emily feels guilty. "Brother, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have worn such a long dress." Ivy, and says mockingly, "I thought you two were such close sisters-in-law, but it turns out you were just pretending." Emily turns to Jane. "Sister-in-law, please believe me. I didn't do it on purpose, it was an accident." But Ivy keeps provoking Jane. "See? She just wants to steal your husband. This was all part of her plan." Lucas looks at Jane and says, "Jane, you should believe in me." "Jane. I trust only you, Lucas." In front of everyone, Lucas clarifies, "Emily and I share only a sibling relationship. My mother adopted her because she once saved her life. I have only one wife, and that is Jane." But Ivy refuses to back down. "Your husband and his so-called sister are having an affair and cheating on you." Jane, furious, slaps Ivy. "One is my husband, and one is my sister. I trust them more than you because I know exactly what kind of person you are. No matter what lies you try to spread, you won't be able to ruin our relationship." Ivy then accuses Jane of intentionally pushing Emily. "Jane. Wait a moment. Let's check the CCTV footage and see the truth." She plays the video for everyone, showing how Ivy deliberately stepped on Emily's dress and pushed her. Jane glares at Ivy. "I know you too well. If we didn't have this CCTV footage, you would have falsely accused Emily and ruined her reputation." Everyone starts whispering, criticizing Ivy. What a terrible sister she is. Leo, frustrated, grabs Ivy's arm. "Stop making a scene. We came here for business. If I don't get Miss Wynn's investment, I won't forgive you." Ivy, still seething, makes a call to find out who Miss Wynn's agent is. When she hears the answer, she freezes in shock. "What? Jane is Miss Wynn's agent?" Both Leo and Ivy are stunned. Meanwhile, Lucas takes Jane and Emily away from the party. Ivy suddenly realizes something. Jane has also been reborn. That means she knows everything, just like me. A sinister thought crosses Ivy's mind. She pulls out a knife and lunges toward Jane, but before the blade reaches Jane, Emily jumps in front of her, taking the stab wound instead. Ivy's face lights up with joy. Just like in the past life. "I killed her then, and I killed her now too." Panic erupts as Lucas and Jane rush Emily to the hospital. At that moment, Miss Wynn arrives. Jane turns to her in distress. "Ivy stabbed my husband's sister. We need to get her to the hospital immediately." Once they reach the hospital, Jane sits in the waiting room, lost in thought. Is everything going to repeat itself just as Ivy said? No matter what I do, am I really unable to change fate? She remembers her past life, when Lucas had gathered all the evidence against Leo and left, ensuring she could divorce him. Then she recalls how Leo had stormed into the hospital to meet her afterward. He had shouted at her, his face twisted with anger, "The man you trusted. The one who helped you. He's dead." He had thrown a newspaper in front of her. The headline read, "Lucas dies in tragic accident." Jane's heart pounds in fear. Is history repeating itself? Jane thinks to herself, no matter what, I will find a way to save everyone's life. Just then, the doctors inform them that Emily needs a blood transfusion, but none of their blood types match. Jane suddenly remembers, if Miss Wen is really Emily's mother, then only she can help. Without wasting time, she rushes to Miss Wen and tells her, Emily is your daughter, and she needs blood right now. Miss Wen is shocked, but doesn't hesitate. She rushes to the hospital and donates blood. After the procedure, she looks at Lucas and Jane with gratitude. Because of you both, my daughter is safe today. Thank you. Lucas, still processing everything, asks, are you really Emily's mother? Miss Wen and explains, Emily got lost years ago, and I've been searching for her for 3 years, but I couldn't find anything. When Emily finally wakes up, Miss Wen holds a press conference to announce that she has found her long-lost daughter. She also declares that she will give all her wealth to Jane. Jane is my daughter too. She saved both me and Emily. She is our lifesaver, but Jane immediately refuses. I don't want all this. Miss Wen smiles warmly. No, I'm giving it from my heart. You are my daughter. Emily also holds Jane's hand and says, Sister, take it. Mom loves you so much. I've finally found my mother, and nothing makes me happier. Later, at home, Jane sits deep in thought when Lucas approaches her. What's wrong? Why do you look upset? He asks. She hesitates before asking, are you really letting Emily go with her mother? Lucas. She has finally found her real family. Why wouldn't I let her go? Jane looks at him. But you really like her, don't you? Lucas. What are you saying? Why would I like her? She is just my sister. Now I understand. You were talking about divorce because you misunderstood my relationship with Emily. He takes her hands. Jane, don't listen to Ivy. There's nothing between me and Emily. Jane lowers her eyes. No, it's not that. Lucas lifts her chin and kisses her. Then trust me. Trust me more than anyone else. Jane's heart fills with warmth, and she smiles. This time, I won't let Ivy control my fate. This time, I will change everything. Meanwhile, Leo, furious with Ivy, starts hitting her. You're useless to me now. But Ivy, desperate. I can still help you become the family heir. Leo's anger fades, replaced by greed. If you can do that, then I'll keep you around. Ivy's plan is simple. She will go to his grandfather for one night, making sure Leo secures his place as heir. Once that happens, she will enjoy his wealth while Leo benefits from her schemes. Later, at a grand party, Emily teases Jane and Lucas. Now that your relationship is so strong, when are you going to give me a nephew? Both of them turn red with embarrassment. Lucas chuckles. Very soon. However, Jane soon overhears something shocking. Leo still wants an heir. Her heart races. Everything from the past life is happening again. Will I really not be able to save Lucas this time? She watches as Leo treats Ivy cruelly, just as he once treated her in the past life. Jane feels a pang of sympathy. Even after everything, she's suffering the same fate as I did. Wanting to give Ivy a chance, Jane approaches her. If you want, I can help you get a divorce. But Ivy, blinded by pride and resentment, glares at her. I don't need your help. You just want me to divorce Leo because he's about to become rich, and you want to take him for yourself. Jane is stunned. Ivy's hatred hasn't changed at all. Ivy, filled with hatred, decides to take revenge on Jane. She secretly drugs Lucas and Emily, making them extremely drunk. Taking advantage of the situation, Ivy orders the maid to lock them in a room together. She then gathers some people to expose Lucas and Emily, hoping to humiliate Jane. However, Jane arrives just in time and stops her plan. Instead, the onlookers witness something completely different, Leo having fun with his mistress. The situation turns against Ivy, and she becomes the subject of mockery. Furious and humiliated, she slaps Leo. "You're cheating on me," she yells. Leo, enraged by the public embarrassment, slaps her back. "How dare you insult me in front of everyone?" Panicking, Ivy pushes him away to protect herself. And Leo's head hits the wall. At that moment, he suddenly remembers everything from his past life. Consumed by rage, Leo screams, "I should have married Jane. Then I would have been rich." He starts banging his head against the wall in frustration, blaming Ivy for ruining his life. Meanwhile, Emily, still affected by the drugs, collapses. Lucas's assistant, Caston, quickly steps in. "I'll take her to the hospital." "Boss, you should come too." But Lucas refuses. "You go ahead." "I don't need to go. I have my antidote." Jane, worried, insists, "Lucas, let's go to the hospital together." But he gently reassures her. "There's no need. I'll be fine." That night, Jane and Lucas stay together. The next morning, when Jane recalls everything that happened, she feels overjoyed. Before heading to work, Lucas leaves her a message, "I love you." Jane smiles brightly, feeling truly happy. However, as soon as she steps outside, Leo kidnaps her. Holding her captive, he glares at her and says, "You were meant to be my wife." At that moment, Jane realizes the horrifying truth. Leo remembers everything from their past life too. She glares back. "No matter what you do, I will never marry you." Enraged, Leo starts beating her. "Then you're of no use to me alive." Just as things take a turn for the worse, Lucas arrives to rescue her. "Let Jane go. Take all my shares, but don't hurt her," he pleads. But Leo, "What will I gain from your money now? I want your life instead." Dragging Jane to the edge of the road, he holds a knife to her throat. "Stand in the middle of the road, Lucas. If you refuse, I'll kill her right now." Without hesitation, Lucas steps onto the road. A speeding car approaches, ready to hit him. At that moment, his memories from the past life come flooding back. Just as the car is about to strike, Lucas's assistant rushes in and pulls him to safety. At the same time, Lucas's guards capture Leo. Jane, overwhelmed with relief, rushes to Lucas. He looks at her with regret. "I'm sorry. I remembered everything too late." Jane smiles softly. "It's okay." But suddenly, she faints. When she regains consciousness in the hospital, she looks around in confusion. "What happened to me?" Lucas's mother sits beside her, holding her hand. With a warm smile, she says, "You're pregnant. Didn't you know? You and Lucas are going to have a baby." Jane is shocked, but overjoyed. Lucas, holding her close, says, "Thank God nothing happened to our baby because of Leo. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spared him." Caston reassures them, "Don't worry. For everything Leo has done, he will spend the rest of his life in jail. He will never be able to hurt anyone again." After recovering, Jane tells Lucas she wants to go for a walk. As they step outside, they come across Ivy. She has completely lost her mind and is wandering aimlessly after escaping from a mental hospital. Jane watches her with a mix of sadness and realization. In her past life, she was evil, and bad things happened to her. In this life, she made the same choices and ruined everything for herself. Hand in hand, Jane and Lucas walk away, knowing they were destined to be together in both lives. And with that, their story comes to a happy ending. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel.